But my brother was saying that there was a highway that was marked SR 121 or something like that. Well, you think about it, SR, state route. See what I'm saying? Yeah, Alberta's a state, for sure.
Like Alberta's a state or Canada's almost a state?
Well, Canada's a federal state, but Alberta is a state, equivalent to Montana, or, you know, Texas or Arizona or whatever.
And so the dual citizenship from earlier
Of course,
applies to all.
of course,
Yeah.
of course. Anyways, and then it goes on, in this 311, it says, state when referring to a part of the United States includes any state. But then you think about it, state includes a province of Canada, and then you go state includes any state, district, commonwealth, territory, insular possession, any area subject to the legislative authority of the United States of America. It's saying province of Canada is subject to the legislative authority of the United States of America. Think about it.
It's interesting that, you know, you've been seeing more stuff about the CIA being able to come to Canada and blah, blah, blah. Well, they've always been able to.
Yeah.
Canada is the United States.
Yeah.
Get a load of this. U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission. Canada is domiciled in the District of Columbia. There's also this is in the Securities Act of 1933. The term separate account means an account established and maintained by an insurance company pursuant to the laws of any state or territory, United States, the District of Columbia, or Canada.
Or any problem.
Or any province thereof. So U.S. Congress is passing legislation for Canada. Think about it.
Color of law.
Man, this thing keeps wanting to go too.
Color of country.
In this state and within this state, in this state and within this state, in all block capital letters, includes all federal areas lying within the external boundaries of the state. So,
That's all it
in this state means within the exterior limits of Texas and includes all territory within those limits ceded to or owned by the United States. And that's in Texas tax code. This is taken from the Texas Transportation Code. The owner of a motor vehicle registered in this state. The owner that is required to be title registered in this state. See, it's where, so if you go back to the tax code is talking about in the state. So they're talking about in federal areas of Texas for this Texas Transportation Code. See what I'm saying? That's all talking about federal areas. This is Texas Transportation Code license required. It's only federal areas of Texas. This is talking about financial responsibilities only in federal areas of Texas. This is talking about inspections done only in federal areas of Texas. This is talking about municipal court and judges only in federal areas of Texas. Texas is under military occupation. I don't know if you're aware of that. Since the Civil War, they've been under military occupation. All the southern states have, quite frankly. So, you know, it's under martial law. Matter of fact, what happened is I was in West Texas, and I got arrested by the Border Patrol. I was going on I-10, so I was well inside the United States, and the Border Patrol had this place that stops everybody, right? I don't know if you've been on I-10 in South in Texas. And so everybody has to stop, and I come up to the wherever it was, and they told me, put your hand on the steering wheel. They didn't ask me anything.
Huh?
They said, put your hands on the steering wheel. I did. And then they told me, get out of the vehicle. I did. And they brought out handcuffs, and they were getting ready to handcuff me. And I said, I want to know why I'm being arrested. Why am I being arrested? And they put the handcuffs away then, and they said, well, we want you to go in this room. I said, no, I'm not going anywhere. And they picked me up and took me into the room. And so then I sat there for a little while, and I said, I want to see who's in charge here. I want to talk to whoever's in charge. So they took me to this captain, and he said, well, he says, your vehicle showed up as someone, you know, of interest. And so, after a few minutes, he says, okay, you can go now. Well, that was false imprisonment, kidnapping, assault. So I filed a lawsuit, and I named the governor, right, among others. And what happened is the governor responded. And the governor said, that's one of the things I said, is that his military troops assaulted me and kidnapped me, and all of the rest of it. And the governor came back and said he didn't authorize any military troops to assault you or kidnap you, or, you know, see what I'm saying? So it was out of his power, but you know that
He was washing his hands of it.
right. Yeah. Well, he didn't authorize it. It's under military occupation.
Yeah.
Anyways, he actually, the governor of Texas has come out on national TV and said that Texas is preparing to become an independent nation. So Scallion, that does the future map, says that the United States is going to break up. Texas is going to be the first to go. I think it's already gone, but certainly it's looking like it's pretty soon it's going to be official. You know what I mean? I mean, when the Secretary of State, the U.S. Secretary of State, says she's going to the Republic of Texas, and then the governor is saying we're preparing to become an independent nation, I mean,
Yeah.
it's close.
Yeah, it's already there.
Yeah.
It's in the works.
And
Interesting.
What does
and
that mean?
technically, sorry,
What does that mean, like,
what do you mean?
like on the streets of Texas, what does that mean?
Well, I mean, you ever watch that TV program where Texas has a military force and basically anybody that comes close gets shot down or has to get interrogated, and yeah, that's a
Because
border.
they'd be entering the Republic,
Mhm.
so they would set up their own.
It'll
border.
be sovereign nation.
So I wonder what happens to the, you know, Texas, the corporation, and all agents of the corporation.
Well,
There's
they'll
gonna be
probably-
a clash there, you know what I mean?
I guess a lot of it depends on what kind of relationship or what kind of separation they have. In other words, the United States still has military bases in Texas. You see what I'm saying? And if Texas has to forcibly evict the United States military, that could be a problem. But if the United States says, that's okay, we're gonna move our troops out. You see what I'm saying? Or Texas says that all you U.S. troops, you can become Texas troops if you want, and it's peaceful.
Yeah.
Then, you know, that's probably what'll happen. See what I'm saying? If Texas has to, you know, that's what happened with the South, right? Fort Sumter, when, of course, that, they say was a false flag operation, but theoretically, what precipitated the Civil War was when the South fired on Fort Sumter. And I think a lot of it was the South, you know, they were really egotistical and they were anchored to go to war anyways. And so even if it was a false flag operation, they didn't do anything to put a stop to it. You see what I'm saying? And so, at any rate, Texas is it's the only state in the union that has a negative cash flow as far as taxes going to the federal government. In other words, they spend more money, they send more money to the federal government than they take in, okay? And whereas all the rest of the states take in more money from the federal government than they spend in taxes. Texas is the only state in the union that sends more money to the federal government than they take in. So if they separate, I mean, Texas is in very good fiscal condition anyways. I mean, and there's like 20 million people in Texas. So, you know, I don't, given the mood that all of the states are in the U.S. right now, as far as the federal government concerned and Obama, I don't think that, I think it's going to be a peaceful separation, and basically the United States will just go away. Matter of fact, according to Scallion, he says that there's going to come a point in time when there's riots in every major city, and a great nation is going to disappear in one day, and it'll be the federal government. And it's not just Scallion that's saying that too, by the way. There's technical remote viewers. Are you guys familiar with technical remote viewers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they say the same thing. So, you know, I don't know, I guess we'll see, you know, we're like a captive audience anyways, you know, we get to see whether we like it or not. But anyways, assistant prosecuting attorneys are in the federal areas of Texas. This is talking about qualify for appointment as a judge is only in federal areas of Texas. Law enforcement agencies are only in federal areas of Texas. The Office of Court Texas Administration for the Texas judicial system is jury summons. That's only in federal area of Texas. You know the quickest way to get yourself off a jury in the U.S.? Anywhere in the U.S. I'm not one of your low-life scumbag U.S. citizens. You'll be off of there so fast your head will spin. Telling you, serious as an heart attack. That's all you have to do.
Federal citizen.
Huh?
Federal citizen.
Yeah, absolutely. That'd be the quickest way.
Can you do that in Canada too?
Huh?
Can you say that in Canada too?
Well, see, in Canada, it's not very well defined. You know, it's obvious that it's there, but the issues aren't being brought up, I should say. And I'm bringing it up in my case, but you know, how far it gets. I have a feeling that I'll probably wind up going to the Supreme Court. You know, I guess we'll see. You know, it depends on what happens in the lower court. But I'll tell you what I plan on doing if necessary is I'll do the petition for a writ of prohibition, and if they don't give it to me, it's appeal, right? I'll go to the Court of Appeals, and then I'll go to the Supreme Court. And you know, at the end of the day, if they don't give it to me, then I guess I'm stuck. You know what I mean? But a writ of prohibition is the proper way of doing it. But if it gets to the Supreme Court and I lose, well, then they're basically taking jurisdiction, and I don't have any choice in the matter. You see what I'm saying? And I'm going to have to deal with it, you know, in their admiralty jurisdiction.
Color
but-
of law style.
Huh?
Color of law style.
Yeah. But I think I'm going to win. You know, I don't know where. I might win the lower court. I might have to go all the way to the Supreme Court. I don't know. But I think I'm going to win. I mean, to me, that's my interpretation of that dream I told you about. And it may be that I lose, and you know the minimum sentence according to their sentencing guidelines is 3 years in prison for the charges that they've charged the straw man for. And so I guess there is a scenario where I could wind up going to jail and it still happen. You see what I'm saying? Because what happens in the courts isn't justice. They know that what I'm saying is true, and you know, even if I lose, all that means is it's the law of the case. Okay, I don't know if you're aware of that, but there's such a thing as the law of the case. In other words, if you don't bring up certain issues at the right time, then you lose that opportunity. We're going to talk about that, and but that doesn't mean those issues aren't valid issues. That just means that the law of the case kicks in, and in this case, it's not a valid issue. You see what I'm saying? And it comes down to the law of the case. Anyways, all of this tangible, all taxes are in federal areas of Texas. Let's see, this is talking about labor code is in federal areas of Texas. This is talking about code of criminal procedure is in federal areas of Texas. A warrant for arrest, federal areas of Texas. Texas code of criminal procedure is in federal areas of Texas. Texas code of, this is search warrants in federal areas of Texas. This is talking about emergency clause. This is one of these emergency clauses. I was telling you about that. They even put it in their statutes. In their, this is online. You can actually go online, and they actually put it. And what that's telling me, quite frankly, is that they want everybody to know that this is an emergency, and give people, because it's a code of criminal procedure. Texas is the murdering state. They put like 100 people every year to death, and so it's like they're holding this out as your opportunity to get out of this death sentence, because you know what I mean. And at least that's my opinion. And it's federal areas of Texas and an emergency clause. Okay, so when there's an emergency clause, it means absolutely nothing. See here, it says the facts that the laws relating criminal procedure in this state have not been completely revised and recoded in more than a century, and the further fact that administrative justice in the field of criminal law, and it goes on, but it's an emergency clause. And so they're saying there's an emergency, we need to pass this thing right away. Well, that's a bunch of crap. But emergency is justification for nothing. Texas banks are all in the federal areas of Texas. This is talking about occupations code is in federal areas of Texas. Civil and practice code, the rule of decision in this state, consists of those portions of the common law of England that are not inconsistent with the, in other words, they throw in all these disclaimers for common law. But notice it's common law of England, okay? It's not just common law, it's common law of England. That's very important. The term United States, this is in the U.S. code. When you use the geographical sense, they're basically saying it twice. Look at this. When used in geographical sense, it means any state of the United States, the District of Columbia, the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico, the Virgin Islands, Guam, American Samoa, and the Commonwealth of Northern Mariana Islands. And any possession of the United States and any waters within the jurisdiction of the United States. Well, it listed all the possessions right there. Right? So it's basically saying it. And then it's any waters. You see what I'm saying? So it's admiralty again. Remember, just like Canada. Whoever falsely and willfully represents himself to be a citizen of the United States shall be fined under this title and imprisoned not more than 3 years. So I tell them, I can't tell them I'm a U.S. citizen. I know I'm not. And, you know, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We can presume they know the law. Either that or their supervisors have perjured their oath of office. And this is U.S. and Canada. There's a Magna Carta chapter that talks about that. Officers of the court have no immunity when violating constitutional right, for they're deemed to know the law. They have no right to charge a fee for their so-called justice. And that's Article 1 in Amendment in the U.S. They have no right to do anything to anybody except by a common law. And that's Article 5 in Amendment. And that's another thing. In the U.S., it's called Article 5 in Amendment. It's not the Fifth Amendment, okay? The Fifth Amendment is a constitutional charter thing, okay? So if you say Fifth Amendment, then you're arguing a corporate charter. Article 5 in Amendment is what the original Constitution says, okay? So, you know, the wording on everything is extremely important, and you have to do your research and make sure you get the wording right. This is Chapter 45 of the Magna Carta. And this is great here. We will appoint as justices, constables, sheriffs, or bailiffs only such as know the law of the realm and mean to observe it well. In other words, you know, some judge says, he says, what are you talking about? Well, judge, you're supposed to know the law. Either that, you know, or Chapter 45 of the Magna Carta says you're supposed to know the law. So what's up with that? You know, really? Are you trying to entrap me, or are you ignorant of the law? Which one is it? You know, really, serious, you know. When I was talking to that judge in this case in Lethbridge, he knew exactly what I was talking about, and I knew what he was talking about. And he actually, I think he helped me. He was trying to help me without, you know, doing too much. You know what I mean? And he told me what I had to do. I had to file an action in Queen's Bench. And that's what I need to do. They have no right to charge a fee for their so-called justice. This is Chapter 40. Remember I was telling you about how in the judge's handbook it says they will not deny justice? Well, actually this is what it says. And it says, to no one will we sell, to no one will we refuse or delay right or justice. Okay? And that means filing fees, they're selling their justice. That's exactly what it is. It's an excise tax, and I can prove it. Law merchant is private international law, and they're violating Chapter 8 of the 38 of the Magna Carta. No bailiff for the future shall put us to his unsupported complaint without producing any, put us to his law without producing credible witnesses. So, put us to his law, you know, that's private law, right? Putting us to his law, and then without credible witnesses. And that means, that, in my opinion, does not mean government officials, okay? It's got to be someone separate. You see what I'm saying? Because it's basically, they're all bailiffs. Like in my case with customs, okay? They're all officers of the court or peace officers. They're all peace officers, so they have to produce some witnesses, and peace officers can't be the witnesses. You see what I'm saying? They can't be the witnesses because they're just more bailiffs. It's no bailiff. They have no right to do anything except to us except by common law. No freeman shall be taken or imprisoned or seized or exiled or in any way destroyed, nor will we go upon him or send upon him except by the lawful judgment of his peers or the law of the land. Now, it doesn't say except for Canada Customs. It doesn't say except for customs anywhere. okay? And so that means anybody, anywhere. And the law of the land is not some statute, it's common law by indictment, and there's no indictment. Capitis diminutio, we'll go through that when we go later. Capitis diminutio means the diminishing of status through the use of capitalization. It's Roman law, okay, and that's what they're doing, is Roman law. A diminishing or abridgment of personality, a loss or curtailment of a man's status or aggregate of legal attributes or qualifications. That's Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. It goes on. Capitis diminutio media is where, if you look, it's John and then Doe is uppercase letters, okay? Now, this guy that's got this website, private-person.com, okay? What he says is it's not to do with spelling. He says that's a matter of style. And so if you bring up the spelling issue, they'll ignore you. But you have to bring up style. And when you bring up style, that's exactly what it is if you think, because a D is a D is a D, whether it's uppercase or lowercase. And it's style. And so, but that's exactly what they're doing. So if you bring up that issue, it's a matter of style, not spelling.
And I think they always, when they say style, and they always add cause to it.
Huh?
They always add cause to style and cause.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's got a meaning, sincerely, big time.
Yeah, yep. Capitis diminutio maxima means all block capital letters. And sometimes the last name is first, and that's when you become a slave. We have no more right to decline the exercise of jurisdiction which is given than to usurp that which is not given. The other, one or the other would be treason. Breach of trust. Treason is a breach of trust. I've seen court cases that say they have to have the appearance of justice. We use the color of money to purchase the color of justice, to get color of title for our land and our vehicles and other property. Do we really own anything? Of course, based on their definitions, we're not owners anyways, right? Everything is in fraud. It's like Ford Motor Company. Ford Motor Company makes rules and regulations for its employees. Does that mean anything to you? What happens when you get involved in the internal rules and regulations for Ford Motor Company? There's two jurisdictions in Canada, the geographical landmass and the juristic federal unit. A juristic person's a corporation. And this is all found in Bouvier's Law Dictionary and the words and phrases judicially decided in Canadian courts. Whoops. The word Canada is used in Section 91(1) of the Constitution Act. Does not refer to Canada as a geographical unit, but refers to the juristic federal unit, the corporation. That's words and phrases judicially decided in Canadian courts. The usual form of juristic person and the only one at common law is a corporation. Whoops. Trusts. Go a little bit into trust now. Is an equitable right, title, or interest. A trust has complete equity. And the reason is that you have an equitable title, or the trustee has an equitable title. The real title is still held whoever owned it before. See what I'm saying? They only have an equitable title in the court. Beneficial interest. It's all for persons. It's fictitious entities. Okay, so you're in the matrix when you use trust. A beneficiary is that term is frequently used synonymous with the technical phrase "cesticate trust." Beneficiary, again, this is Black's Law Dictionary, 7th edition. It's a person. A settler is a person. A founder is a person. We're talking all about fictitious entities. Anything to do with the trust is fictitious entities. A grantor is a person. Black's Law Dictionary, 2nd edition. Beneficiary, Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Beneficiary is a person. There's 3 different definitions there, and they're all persons. Settler, Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. Settler is a person. Founder is a person. 2 definitions of a person. Creators goes back to settler. Or no, creator goes back to settler, right. A donor. That one's not a person, is it? That's interesting. And but that's all in Black's Law Dictionary, 8th edition. A donor's not a person. That's interesting. Equity. I need to put this in my thing on the courts. But anyways, equity in the early history. Let's make a little note to myself. In the early history of the law, the sense affixed to this word was extremely vague and uncertain. This is owing in part to the fact that the chancellors of those days were either statesmen or ecclesiastics, perhaps not very scrupulous in the exercise of power. It was then asserted that equity was bound by no certain limits or rules, and that it was alone controlled by conscience and natural justice. That's Bouvier's Law Dictionary, 1856 edition, but it's also taken from Blackstone's Commentaries. That's what that 3BLCOM stands for. Book 3, Blackstone's Commentaries. Blackstone's Commentaries was a 4-volume set. Equity, a court of equity. A court of equity is one which administers justice, where there are no legal rights, or legal rights, but courts of law do not afford a complete remedy, and where the complainant has also an equitable right. And so you've got to think about this for a second. Courts of law, they're talking about common law, okay, or statutory law, but mostly common law. And so they're saying, for example, the bankster thieves, okay, a mortgage is an equitable interest in the house, okay? You have legal title, but the bank has an equitable title. And so anytime a bank is doing anything, when they bring the action, it comes into a court of equity. And that's why you lose every time, because the court of equity works on whoever pays the fee. They lean towards that. Let me put it that way. It's not guaranteed, but they lean towards that. And so when they bring the action, now if you bring the action and it's all in what you say, okay? Remember, by your words, they use it against you, okay? So it's all in what you say. So if you brought an action saying how this loan was a fraud and a nullity and they didn't loan you anything, well, gee, that sounds like common law arguments. You see what I'm saying? And you bring an action against them, well, you might win. You see what I'm saying? Again, you'd stand a way better chance of winning by you bringing the action and sticking to common law arguments. You see what I'm saying? And how this is a fraud and a nullity and doesn't exist and they didn't loan me anything, and you see what I'm saying? You're not a debtor. You see what I'm saying? And definitely you had your ducks in a row. But if they bring the action of foreclosure, then it's, it really doesn't matter what you say, quite frankly. It's really tough. Matter of fact, that's why in the States most of foreclosures are done administratively. They don't even go before a court. They just steal your house on you, sell it right there. Sell it in the courthouse steps. They do it in the courthouse steps because, in my opinion, because it's not lawful, so they can't go in the courthouse and do it, so they just do it somewhere nearby. They're playing their game still. Anyways, yeah, so that's a court of equity. Equity, the system of law or body of principles originating in the English Court of Chancery and superseding the common and statute law. Remember we talked about how says here, where there are no legal rights or legal rights, but courts of law do not afford a complete remedy. Okay, like for a foreclosure, if the bankster thieves are trying to steal your house because you're not making your extortion payments, courts of law are not common law. Says, well, you don't own anything anyways. Really, that's common law. Common law, pure common law. You didn't. You just gave that money away. Okay, court of equity, different. Okay. Common law, first of all, common law, you gave them this commercial paper, okay? You didn't loan anything, okay? Really, that's common law. And so, at common law, they wouldn't stand a chance. And so, the bank will never bring it into a common law court. That would be a complete waste of time for them. They'll bring it into a court of equity, and then chances are they'll win. It'll be like almost a foregone conclusion. Anyways, the system of law, body of principles originating in the English Court of Chancery and superseding the common and statute law, together called law in the narrow sense. When the two conflict and appealing to the equity of the court, she's appealing to the king's conscience. So in other words, Black's Law Dictionary, 7th edition, so in other words, they're saying, do the right thing here, appealing to the king's conscience. And, that they can do just about anything, quite frankly. We'll talk about that under martial law. They can literally do anything they want. And they'll tell you that. And anyways, laches. And I think we were talking about this earlier. This is the principle of where you unreasonable delay in pursuing a right or claim, almost always an equitable one, in a way that prejudices the party against whom relief is sought, also termed sleeping on rights. The equitable doctrine by which a court denies relief to a claimant who has unreasonably delayed in asserting a claim when that delay has prejudiced the party against whom relief is sought. The doctrine of laches is an instance of the exercise of the reserved power of equity to withhold relief otherwise regularly given, where in the particular case the granting of such relief would be unfair or unjust. Whether it's unfair or unjust is certainly open to debate, but basically it's the idea of sleeping on your rights. If you don't assert your rights, you lose them, and you have to assert them, and you need to assert them. If you delay for some reason, you got to explain why. How come it took so long?
That's what lâcher means, to let go, to release.
Right. So you need to understand that. If you got to assert your rights. Everything they do is under probate law for dead things. A person is a dead thing. Are you a dead thing? Whereas taxation by the Parliament for the purpose of raising revenue has been found by experience to occasion great uneasiness and disorders, that from and after the passing of this Act, the King and Parliament of Great Britain, I got to make a note to myself. Anyways, that from and after the passing of this Act, the King and Parliament of Great Britain will not impose any duty, tax, assessment, whatever payable in His Majesty's colonies, provinces, or plantations in North America, except such duties as it may be expedient to impose for the regulation of commerce. So the U.S. said, fuck you. And they passed this 1778, 2 years later, after the Declaration of Independence. This is another good one. Offenses committed within the Indian Territory shall be tried in the same manner as if committed within the provinces of Lower and Upper Canada. Place and manner of trial of such offenders not being subject of His Majesty, and also within the limits shall be acquitted. So I'm going to use that, I guarantee you. I'm not subject. You need to acquit this case. I think I already have, in fact, but I'll do it again. Whoops. There are certain words that are used in martial law. Resident or residence. Sovereigns inhabit. A home is an abode. Traffic is definitely a commercial word. Commissioner. Drive. Human. This human is a monster. Liberty. You have freedom. Mail. You use the post. Transportation is completely unknown to common law. Spouse is a person. I don't have a spouse. I got a wife. Children is another one. I need to put that down. Children is another one. I have sons and daughters. I know a guy in Ontario that does that. He says, my sons and daughters, it's not my children. They're my sons and daughters. Children is something they have jurisdiction over. That's why Child Protective Services. That's exactly what it is. Any word that is for a person, trustee, trustor, beneficiary, anything to do with setting up trusts. And this is that quote of Vattel with the Law of Nations about residence. And this is that one about one does not necessarily abscond himself from his place of abode, become a non-resident. And this is about the Attorney General representing the King at common law. Both in English and Roman law, there are certain obligations which are these quasi contracts. This is what they're getting you into. Okay, assumpsit. Look up the word assumpsit, and it'll talk about quasi contracts. Both in Roman and English law, there are certain obligations which are not in truth contractual, but which the law treats as if they were. They were contractual in law, but not in fact, being subject matter of a fictitious extension of the sphere of contract to cover obligations which do not in reality fall within it. So Yeah, you gotta think about that. We got several things here on quasi-contracts. Constructive or quasi-contracts are based solely upon the legal fiction or fiction of law. That's the reason they need a birth date, that's the reason they need a fictitious entity. Because that's what they get into the quasi-contract, and then they get you, the living soul, to be a surety for their fictitious entity. It is well settled rule of law that he who seeks benefit of contract must also assume burdens. A quasi-contractual action presupposes acceptance and retention of a benefit by one party with full appreciation of the facts under circumstances making it inequitable, remember, court of equity, inequitable for him to retain the benefit without payment of its reasonable value. Existence of implied contract is usually a question of fact for the trial court. Voluntary acceptance of benefit of transaction is equivalent to consent to all obligations arising from it, so far as facts are known or ought to be known to person accepting. So, I mean, that's exactly what I've been bringing up from mine is, where's the contract? Where did I agree with this? Absolutely.
The person accepting.
Yeah, yeah. Quasi-constructive include obligations founded on statutory duties. Okay, so it is obligations founded on statutory duties. Come on. Persons dealing with the government are charged with knowing government statutes and regulations, and they assume the risk that government agents may exceed their authority and provide misinformation. All persons in the United States are charged with knowledge of the statutes at large, and it is well established that anyone who deals with the government assumes the risk that the agent acting on the government behalf has exceeded the bounds of his authority. Generally speaking, an account stated is based on the common law concept that an implied contract arises when the debtor submits to the creditor, the taxpayer, a statement of the final balance due on account, and the creditor agrees to accept the proposed balance to close the account. That's how the IRS or CRA does it. It's common law. Persons who are not taxpayers are not within the system and can obtain no benefit by following the procedures prescribed for taxpayers, such as the filing of claims for refunds. The revenue laws are a code or a system of regulation of tax assessment and collection. They relate to taxpayers and not to non-taxpayers. The latter are without their scope. No procedures are prescribed for non-taxpayers, and no attempt is made to annul any of their rights and remedies in due course of law. With them, Congress does not assume the deal. They are neither the subject nor the object of revenue laws. In doing, I already read this one earlier, in doing this I shall have occasion incidentally to evince how true it is that states and governments were made for man, and at the same time how true it is that his creatures and servants have first deceived, next vilified, and at last oppressed their master and maker. A state like a merchant makes a contract, a dishonest state like a dishonest merchant willfully refuses to discharge it. It's all about slavery. A person is a slave, either you're the king or you're a slave, and there's nothing in between. If you participate in their color of law statutes, then you've agreed to be their slave. It's only involuntary servitude that's not lawful. Nobody said it'd be easy, but it is possible. And what's the alternative? And that's the end of that one.
Glenn, have we earned a lunch now?
Sure. 1:30, do you want to go to lunch? Might as well, eh? This common law one is pretty long.
So we'll be back at 2 o'clock or